before this video begins, I just want to make it clear that this sort of rant, unscripted, just talking off the top of my head kind of video, this isn't going to be a common thing. Or at the very least, it's not going to be, the main kind of video that I want to put on this channel. I may do future ones, it just depends on how I feel, but for the most part, this channel is for scripted stuff. What I'm doing right now, where it's unscripted, that's not going to be a common thing. Adding on to that, if I stutter, if I pause, if I repeat my words, that's why. This isn't scripted. I do much better with scripted material, because I'm a little slow in the head. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear before starting that, this video is going to be unscripted, so please forgive my my speaking sins, if you will, the ums and the repeats and the stuttering and the stuff like that. So the Ruin DLC came out a few days ago. For those of you who don't know, that is the DLC for the video game Security Breach. It's the latest game in the Five Nights at Freddy's series. If you aren't into FNaF or you don't know what that is, oh well, sorry, then this video may not be for you. But if you do know what that is, then you'll know that that Ruin just came out a few days ago. And these past few days, I've been really focusing on it. I've been watching gameplay, I've been, reading theories online, I've been exploring the Reddit for secrets, waiting for stuff to appear, and, all the stuff that usually comes with a brand new FNaF release. And before you guys ask, or before you tear apart my wording here, no, I do not own Security Breach, and thus I do not own Ruin. I have my own reasons for that, which will probably become apparent as this video goes on. But yeah, I do not own Security Breach, so I had to get my content through YouTubers and stuff like that, reading it all online. And I want to start by saying that this video is not going to be a review of Ruin, because you really can't do that with FNaF. The thing with FNaF games is that you can't judge them, as soon as they come out, because there are so many secrets hidden in them that it takes so long to uncover, that trying to judge FNaF, or say that a FNaF game is good or bad, as soon as it comes out, it's honestly kind of foolish, because, the problems you may have with it, it may be revealed in a secret or something that nullifies an argument, or nullifies a complaint. So, this is not a review of Ruin. Though I may make a full, scripted review of Ruin, in the days to come, maybe in a few days, maybe in, this week, next week, whenever I feel like it. That's when I will make a review for Ruin, if at all. So, despite Ruin coming out just recently, and it being too early to, give my full opinion on it, there is one thing in Ruin, or I guess the better wording would be the lack of something in Ruin, that I really wanted to talk about, because it's something that has been plaguing the FNaF franchise, or it's been a problem pretty much since Security Breach, almost 2 years ago. And that's Vanny. The presence of Vanny. Now, when I say Vanny, I'll just make this clear right here and now. When I say Vanny, I'm talking about both the bunny serial killer, costume, and Vanessa, the security guard slash, human, I know that they should be the same. They really should be the same, but, there's still, no definitive proof that they absolutely are the same. It seems to be that Steelwool and Scott have been sort of, winking and, pointing towards or nodding towards the idea that they're different people. But just know that when I say Vanny, I mean both, the bunny, the costumed killer Vanny, and the night guard, security guard Vanessa. Now, for those of you who don't know, Vanny was a pretty big, like, topic of discipline. Okay, now let me back up a bit. So, Security Breach as a whole had a lot of issues with it. A lot of issues that I agree with. You know, I think that, I'm going to make it clear on my opinions right now, Security Breach is the worst game in the FNaF franchise. It did so much wrong. There's so much I just hate about this game. But above all, I hate what they did to Vanny. You know, what they did to Vanny is by far, like, the most unforgivable thing that Steelwool has ever done. And I don't think I ever will forgive Steelwool for what they did. Now, the reason why is because we need to go back. Or why it's so forgivable is because we need to go back all the way to Help Wanted. Now, in Help Wanted, you know, Vanny was built up. You know, she was built up to be this character that was going to be... that's going to play a pretty big role in the future of FNaF. In fact, it was implied that she was going to be the center focused from here on out, you know. Whether it was, you know, whether Afton or some glitch trap or whatever was also behind the scenes, you know, remained to be seen. But it was pretty apparent in Help Wanted that Vanny was going to be the center of attention, and, you know, and this is something that was solidified in teasers and by Steelwool and by Scott for almost 2 years leading up to Security Breach. In her game period between between Help Wanted and Security Breach, you know, and especially in AR, especially the AR emails. Oh my god, in the AR emails. It was made pretty damn apparent and pretty clear that Vanny was going to be a major. She was gonna have a major role in the upcoming, you know, Security Breach. You know, it was gonna be the biggest FNaF game ever made, and Vanny was gonna be in the center of it. And the reason why I personally got a lot of hype and why I was really, really excited for Vanny is because of the potential she had. Now, I should probably say this, that I think the reason why I hate Security Breach more than anything, or more than anyone, I should say, like, if you know Fiznom, you know how much he hates it? Yeah, I hate it more than him. Like, I will admit that I am the #1 Security Breach hater. And the reason is because I don't care about the majority of crap in Security Breach. I don't care about Gregory. I don't care if he's Patient 46. I don't care if he's the crying child. I don't care if he's some new kid. I don't care if he's evil. I really don't care. I mean, okay. I mean, I certainly have my opinions on, like, what, you know, ideas for him are good or not. But ultimately, I don't care about Gregory. I don't even care about Afton. I don't care if Afton comes back. I don't care if he's the Mimic. I don't care if it's actually him. I don't care if it's some program. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about, you know, is Charlie back? You know, how did the Pizzaplex get made? You know, what is the blob? I don't care about any of that. Do I have my opinions on, like, what's a good story and what is not a good story? Yeah, obviously, of course. You know, I can have opinions about stuff. But when push comes to shove, there was only one thing that I was excited for in Help Wanted. Only one. And that was seeing Vanny. Seeing her character arc. Seeing her, you know, seeing her go through her story. You know, seeing her arc. Like, remember I said I repeat myself a lot when I don't have a script? You know, seeing her. And the main reason is because pretty much whatever path Steelwool and Scott picked for her was going to be interesting and was going to be extremely emotional and very, like, interesting, you know. If she was a copycat killer, it would have been very interesting to see, you know, what made her so infatuated with Afton, you know. We would sort of see, you know, the Afton killings from an outside point of view. And, you know, even more so seeing someone, you know, get obsessed with them and, you know, want to copy that. And so that'd be interesting to see, you know, that'd be a lot of good world building. And, you know, I think it would be interesting to explore Vanny's character and her psychologically? I can't speak. I don't know. But yeah, copycat killer, very good, premise. You know, if she was more of a Jekyll and Hyde situation where, you know, a glitch trap, infected her mind, and then it was sort of like this two-personality thing where, you know, half of her was this good security guard, you know, who's just trying to help people, and the other half is this maniac serial killer. You know, that'd be interesting too. It'd be interesting to see her, especially her good side, you know, grapple with, you know, having this other personality that does these just horrible things with her body, and it has the potential for a lot of like emotional trauma and like character diving, you know, character building, that stuff. So that would have been really interesting to see. You know, make her this sort of this tragic person who, you know, can't control themselves. And then the other option was, you know, maybe it was kind of a mix of the two, where, you know, maybe Glitch Trap doesn't give her an entirely new personality, you know, but maybe he manipulates her. You know, he becomes a voice in her head, and he sort of pushes her to do these things that she normally wouldn't do. And, you know, that's all interesting. That's all so interesting. I love that kind of, you know, that kind of tragic story, you know, and whichever one they chose, whether it was the copycat serial killer, whether it was the Jekyll and Hyde, split personality, whether it was the manipulation where Vanny was sort of coerced into doing things by, you know, this ghost from the past, whichever option Steele picked was going to be great. I knew it. I just knew it, because there's so much there, so much potential for her to just be the most in-depth and most emotionally tragic and like the most invested character in the entire FNaF series. And then Security Breach came along and did nothing with her. Like, did absolutely nothing with her. Like, it didn't go down any of the routes. It chose to just sit there. They chose to just let her character sit there and idle and do nothing, which is undoubtedly the worst option that they could have done. Okay, I shouldn't say that they did nothing. Instead, they decided to add some bullshit Easter eggs into it that maybe implied that Vanny and Vanessa might be two different people, you know? So, great, you know, that, you know, all that, emotional conflict, all that, you know, tragic stuff. Yeah, that's thrown completely out the window, because turns out they're not the same person. Haha, great. And I admittedly, they probably could have made that work, but, you know, it's FNaF, it's Steelwool, it's Scott. Of course they didn't. Of course they didn't. You know, they just continue to give her nothing, you know. You know, instead they said, hey, let's instead of giving her, you know, all this screen time to really develop her character and make people very emotionally invested into her. Yeah, let's give her less than a minute of voice lines, and let's make it so that she only appears like twice throughout the entire game. And then they had the audacity to go and like do the endings and like, you know, be like, oh, you know, you saved Vanny, aren't you so happy? And it's just so unsatisfying because there's nothing. But I'll get into the ending. I'll get into that later. Just know that when Security Breach came out, by far, the thing that pissed me off the most, it wasn't the egregious bugs that were game-breaking bugs that were left in the game. It wasn't how disgustingly unoptimized it was. It wasn't, you know, the unacceptable amount of cut content that's just sitting in the files. Like, I think there was there's this little joke that, you know, me and some other people have, that the reason Security Breach is such it's such a hefty game and why it's takes up so much memory is because most of it is from cut content. But none of that pissed me off. You know, even the characters, you know, bring back Afton, you know, bring back Afton in the most literal sense, I should say, you know, bring him back as a computer virus. I was fine with that, but bringing him back literally, it was a bit much for me. You know, making, you know, Gregory, you know, Patient 46, all that confusing shit, like, none of that pissed me off as much as the way Steele treated Vanny. And, you know, fortunately, a lot of people saw this also, you know. Security Breach, it has its fair share of haters, but it also has its fair share of, we'll say, unjustified defenders, you know, people who take any criticism as a personal attack, and so they feel like the only way to defend Security Breach is to personally attack the people who are criticizing it, which, you know, people will claim that it doesn't exist, but as someone who's been in the FNaF community for the past 2 years, well, I've been in the FNaF community for way longer, but for someone who has been trying to criticize Security Breach for the past 2 years, I can confirm that there are jackasses who are like, oh, you dislike Security Breach? Well, that's just because you're a hater, you know, and your opinions aren't valid because everyone knows that haters are just mindless haters. Oh, fuck, I need a script. But yeah, so you get the picture, you know, people unjustifiably defending it. But even those people who were defending Security Breach to their last breath, you know, who were like, oh, you know, Security Breach is the best game ever, it's peak, you know, if you hate it, it's just because you're a hater. Even those people said that Vanny was shafted in that. So, and if they're saying Vanny was shafted, these people who are excusing, like, the most unforgivable of game development sins are saying Vanny was underutilized, then you know that her lack of appearance is a pretty big problem. And, you know, when Security Breach first came out, I was livid at Steelwool, you know, because, again, past 2 years, I'd been promised, hey, this really cool character that, you know, you're going to get very emotionally invested into, yeah, she actually isn't important to the story any, and she's not important to the games any. And, yeah, we had Heather Masters make these, like, really emotionally driven, voice lines for Vanessa, and, we're just not gonna use them for no reason at all, other than maybe, you know, Map had, you know, got a theory right, and so we wanted to throw you guys all off for the sake of mystery, like, cool, thanks, Steelwool. But people agreed that it was a problem, and, when people gave Steelwool shit, you know, following Security Breach, whether it was, you know, Fiznom level, you know, tearing into it, or, you know, the defenders being like, yeah, okay, this is all good, but this, you know, one small element, you know, that's okay, you know, or that's not okay, but, you know, you should fix it in the next thing. You know, it made it seem like that, it made it seem like Steel was going to, you know, actually listen, and for the most part, they did, you know. Vanny is hard, and it's starting to rain. Oh, I hope this doesn't, like, mess up the audio or anything. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. I'm gonna be pissed if I have to re-record this. So, there were many problems with Security Breach besides besides Vanny, you know, as I said earlier, you know, the bugs, you know, the unpolishness, the gameplay, and even though those were defended vigorously by people who shouldn't be defending the game that much, Steelwool did, you know, they did come out and admit, okay, like, okay, you know, there were parts that we could improve upon, you know, we understand that, you know, it's not very scary, we understand that, you know, the gameplay isn't the most riveting, you know, we understand that, and we promise we'll do better. And so, flash forward, you know, to a few days ago, you know, when Steelwool just released Ruined. You know, Steelwool released Ruined. And, you know, for the most part, they did really good at fixing the stuff people had complaints with, you know. A big complaint of Security Breach was that, you know, it wasn't scary, and so in Ruin, you know, they made it a lot scarier, you know, with, you know, and not just in a jump scare sense, you know, they did make it, like, creepier and, like, darker, you know. Jesus, some of those jump scare animations where Cassie, like, struggling to survive as an animatronic, or struggling against an animatronic coming down on her, like, that's what I want to see. Like, that is what I wanted to see from a 3D FNaF game. So, again, I'm not gonna go too much into Ruin itself, but that's one thing that I really like, you know. Another complaint was that the environment was too bright, you know, there's too many neon lights, there's too many lights on, you know, it needs to be darker. So, when Ruin came along, they literally had no light in the entire building except for the flashlight. So, yeah, they went back and they really nailed that, you know, they made it, hey, you know, the environment's really dark now. A big complaint from a lot of people in, Security Breach was how it was just a bunch of fetch quests and there wasn't that much interesting gameplay. So Steel went ahead and made more puzzle-based, you know, stuff. It was more puzzle-based gameplay and less fetch quests. I know that there have been people who've been complaining that, oh, you know, the puzzles are repetitive and, you know, it aren't that great. You know, interesting at first, but get repetitive over time, which is fair, but, like, it's better than fetch quests, and it proves to me that they at least tried to make it better. And so, yeah, so you have all these complaints from Security Breach that were being addressed. You know, everything that people complained about in Security Breach were addressed. You know, it was made scarier. They made the environment more dark. The atmosphere was better. You know, there's gameplay's better. There's, as far as I'm aware, there's no game-breaking bugs. You know, of course, you know, any game is going to have its fair share of bugs, but you know, they're not as egregious as Security Breach. So it seemed like that they were doing this, and even from a story standpoint, like they did give, it's a bit confusing right now. Again, this is something that we kind of are going to have to wait until more secrets come out and all the secrets and any potential like secret endings are revealed. But they did try to give a bit of explanation for the lore, even though it was pretty clear that they were basing everything off the books, which if you haven't read the books, you wouldn't understand. But that's a whole nother rant for another day, so we're not going to get into FNaF relying on books to tell its story. This rant is going to be long enough. Jesus, already at 20 minutes. So the point is that Ruin addressed a lot of the issues that people had with Security Breach. You know, it was scarier, the environment was made darker, the gameplay was better, it had, you know, as far as I'm aware, it had less bugs, less, you know, I haven't heard of any game-breaking glitches so far, but, you know, that remains to be seen. Either way, you know, it's better than what Security Breach was, which was, like, day one, like, oh my god, like, this is unplayable. Damn thunder. I hope I don't lose power again. Yeah, again. I had to start a new recording, so yay. But anyways, so and when it comes to like lore and characters and stuff, it seems like Steel Wool is trying to address some of the questions, but that remains to be seen because again, you know, it's something I can't really comment on because again, it's FNaF. You know, a lot of secrets. You know, a lot of the real like lore-based stuff are found after like weeks, if not months after the game releases, so I can't really comment on that, but it seems like they're at least trying to explain, you know, some of the lore stuff from Security Breach. So, yeah, so Ruin, you know, Steel Wool made an active effort to fix a lot of the issues people had with Security Breach. So you'd think that they'd give Vanny lots of screen time because, again, even the people who loved Security Breach complained that she wasn't in it enough. So you think that, in response, Steel Wool would give her tons of screen time in Ruin, right? Yeah, no. She doesn't appear once in... Okay, I'll address that. But for the sake of argument, Vanny does not appear once in Security Breach, in Ruin. Not once. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. I know what some of you smartasses are going to say in the comments. No, Vanny appearing in the background of a secret ending and, you know, as a little Easter egg, you know, in a monitor thing, does not count as an appearance. It just doesn't. That's the equivalent to me saying that the Horseless Headless Horseman appears in the seventh comic because he's on the cover. Like, no, that doesn't count. Vanny is not in Ruined, which, you know, oh, Jesus. If you remember back to when the Ruin trailer released, it teased Vanny's mask. You know, it showed, oh, you know, we're gonna have Vanny's mask, which we do in Ruin, you know, we do. But when that came out, I sort of made a joke on my Twitter, like, oh, you know, we better not just stumble across the mask laying on the floor. You know, we better actually interact with Vanny, you know, or there will be hell to pay. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. We just stumble across the mask. We're not given any, like, clues or, like, anything, like, we aren't giving anything relating to the owner of the mask. You know, we aren't told, oh, hey, you know, this mask belonged to, you know, Vanny, you know, and here's a bit of her backstory. No, we just pick it up, and it would make no difference if, like, it's the Vanny mask, but story-wise, it would make no difference if it was just a random, you know, Fazbear Entertainment tool that we came across. Now, I say that, but there probably will be some lore significance being like, oh, you know, this is what Vanny saw, so which might give us a hint as to what Vanny was. But that doesn't change the fact that narratively, it's completely irrelevant to Vanny and her story. And, you know, that pisses me off because Ruin had the opportunity to, well, first off, let me backtrack a bit, or let me not backtrack, but let me go into something related. And that's the ending that is made apparent that is canon, or the apparent canon ending of Security Breach. And that being the Princess Quest ending. The Princess Quest ending is the canon ending for Security Breach, which, by the way, quick little side tangent, I'm not going to turn this to a full rant, even though it could be a full rant. This just further proves that Scott doesn't know what he's doing, that Steel don't know what they're doing, and they're just making this shit up as we go, and that, above all, that there was a lot of retconning behind the scenes, because it was made pretty clear in the game files that the Burn Trap ending was the true ending, but the fact that they're saying, oh, actually, it's the Princess Quest ending, makes it pretty damn clear to me that they retconned this, and they're just making this up as they go, in response to community feedback, and because, the community, like shit, they don't have standards anymore. They're like, oh yes, the shit's fine, just go with this. But that's a whole nother complaint for another day, a whole nother rant. So anyway, Princess Quest is the canon ending, which is horrible for Vanessa and Vanny. It's absolutely awful, because that means that the 3-star Vanny ending is the true one, which means that Vanny as a character and even as a concept is gone. Like, that ship has sailed. That plot point has been exercised. That ending has been ended, satisfied. I don't know the right wording for, I don't know what words to choose for that, but the point is that Vanny as a plot point has been exercised. She's not coming back. Yeah, she's not coming back, because even if the two Vanny theory is correct, it's still Vanny who got redeemed at the end of Princess Quest ending. So Vanny isn't coming back, which leaves her character just so unsatisfyingly incomplete. And yes, now people may say, oh, well, in the Princess Quest ending, she gets redeemed. Isn't that the satisfying ending you want for her? And the answer is no, because there's no second act. Like, yes, Vanny does technically have an ending, but it's with no build-up. Like, okay, let's take a look at it through acts, like a 3-act story, which can be applied to character arcs as well. Act 1, she is a beta tester for some, I think it's a Blue Parasol. It's been a while since I've engaged in the FNaF lore. Blue Parasol, she's a beta tester for them. She gets possessed by Glitch Trap, and now she has Glitch Trap in her head. Cool. Act 2. Was supposed to be, what happens, how does she react to Glitch Trap, her succumbing to Glitch Trap, doing his bidding and murdering kids. And Act 3 is, us saving her and she finally getting the satisfying ending, the escape that she deserves. That second act isn't there because she doesn't appear in Security Breach any. She has almost no dialogue in Security Breach. She has very few appearances in Security Breach. Security Breach was supposed to be that second act for her, the one that explores her character and builds sympathy for her, and, builds her character and delves and really does all just the basic necessities for a character to be good, and it just isn't there. And so when her ending came in Princess Quest, it felt so unsatisfying to me because there was no build up to it. There was no... It couldn't have been satisfying because, again, like, her character was never properly explored. She has no base. She has a beginning and an end, no middle, no meat to her character. And so that's why I think that even before Ruin, I said, or I thought that, Princess Quest is, the worst ending because it exhausts Vanny without satisfying her. It doesn't give us a satisfying Vanny ending. At least in the other endings, in the Burn Trap ending especially, Vanny is still out there, So even though, yeah, they could do, the Princess Quest, saving Vanny twice again, only in a different timeline maybe, yes, they could only do it again, but they still have that opportunity to explore her character. They still have that opportunity to salvage what's there, No, saving Vanny wouldn't be as satisfying as it would have been the first time, the first time we saw it in Security Breach, but it would still be something. There would still be something here. They could still salvage Vanny. They could still make a good story for her. But only if they went with the ending that didn't conclude her story. And they went with the ending that concluded her story. So Vanny, her character's over now. You know, her arc is done. Her arc is over. So she's free now, you know, and people are like, oh yeah, you know, good, you know, Vanny's free, but like, no, like, yes, you know, it's good to see characters get their happy endings, but only after they face the trials that make them deserve the happy ending. Nobody cares when a character who has an easy life ends with an easy life, like, gets the rewards, you know, of happily ever after and whatsoever. People like it when they see characters struggle, and we see them develop, and we see them go through these trials that makes it satisfying for that happy ending. Which is something that Vanny doesn't have. She never got that, you know, those trials, because we didn't see her in Security Breach. And, Jesus, I'm ranting, you know, surprise, surprise. So yeah, Princess Quest is the worst ending for that. And because I know people are gonna say this, the counter argument that I can hear people saying is, oh, Dapper, don't fear, you know. It's clear that they have more plans for Gregory, and if they have more plans for Gregory, surely they have more plans for Vanessa. And so Vanessa, you know, in the future installments, she's gonna get her story, and they're just building Vanessa up. But no, like, Vanny and Vanessa, first off, Vanny and Vanessa was already built up in the years leading up to Security Breach. Like, that's what Help Wanted was. That's what AR was. Those games were building up Vanny. Those games were building up her story. Not Security Breach. Security Breach was supposed to be the middle, if not ending for her. And so saying that, oh well, this is her build up, like no, it's not. It shouldn't be. And second off, Vanessa's story, if she does follow Gregory, you know, and there's still debate on whether Gregory's evil, which, you know, admittedly, like, okay, let's see where that goes with how Vanny interacts with that. But that doesn't change the fact that what I said earlier, that, you know, how interesting would it have been if Vanny was a copycat killer? How interesting would it have been if Vanny, you know, was this Jekyll and Hyde situation, and, you know, seeing Vanessa, you know, come to terms and grapple with her other serial killer, just horrible side self. How interesting would it have been to see, you know, Glitchtrap be this voice in her head, you know, manipulating her and abusing her with words to get her to do these horrible things, and, you know, that would help us build sympathy for this poor, poor woman. You know, those are all great ideas and character arcs and stuff that I want to see that I'm never gonna see now, because the true ending of, you know, Security Breach makes it clear that those aren't going to happen. Those will never happen. And if I want that experience, I need to look to, you know, other third-party sources, like, you know, fan games and, you know, fan comics and fan fictions and stuff like that, which, you know, I'll admit it, like, there is some good stuff out there. Like, I don't know, I think it's the Into Madness comic series that's being done on Twitter right now. That's pretty good. Ooh, hello, Mr. Thunder. You know, that's pretty good, I'll admit. That's pretty good. There is some good fan creations out there. But you'll agree with me when I say that fan creations are nothing compared to, like, an official source, an official story that, like, yes, this is canon, and, you know, we're going to really drive home with these professional writers, because, look, the stuff I've seen online, they're good, but they're not professional level stories, you know. I'm just going to say that. They're good, they're great, like, fanfics and stuff, but they're not professionally written. You know, seeing these professional level stories for this character arc, you know, nothing would have compared to that. Absolutely nothing could have, nothing will compare to that. You know, something that is professionally written and professionally shown, you know. Yeah, comics on Twitter are fun, but it'd be pretty cool if I could see this in a game, you know. So, yeah. So, yeah, the Princess Quest ending is the canon one, and, you know, that whole, you know, Vanny debate of, you know, which Vanny path is best, you know, apparently none of them were taken, you know, now it's probably bullshit, you know, there's two Vannys and stuff like that. So, yeah, and like I said, you know, her story and her arc could have been salvaged in Ruin, you know, if Steel had played their cards right, they could have salvaged her character and salvaged her story, but they didn't, you know, they went for, you know, some other bullshit, you know. Oh, you know, we'll tell her story later, which, no, like, I don't want to see, you know, oh, I don't want to see good guy Vanny. Like, for as horrible as it sounds, I don't want to see Vanny as a good guy, as a purely good guy. I want to see her either as a tragic bad guy, or like that, you know, two minds in one body thing, or some gray area, or just some like copycat, you know, evil person thing. You know, I don't want to see good guy Vanessa, or at least I don't want to see Vanessa be a good guy all throughout. I want her to have that bad side, you know, have that evil side, so that when she does eventually get redeemed, you know, whether it's by kicking out Glitch Trap or something like that, that it is satisfying. You know, it is, you know, that satisfying, you know, over the crest over the hill. I think I'm trying to think of the right wording, where you go over the hill, you know, that satisfying moment, you know, but we'll never get that. And I have some ideas. I have some theories, as you will, as to why Vanny has just been, you know, honestly, like, Vanny as a whole has just been neglected, you know, a lot from Steelwool and Scott. And I have a few theories for that. I have a game theory, if you will, though it's more like a game dev theory. I don't think Steelwool even likes Vanny as a character. Now, when I say Steelwool, I mean like the heads of it. You know, I'm sure that there are individuals within the Steelwool team who do like Vanny and Vanessa as characters. You know, it's pretty evident that the social media manager for their Twitter likes Vanny, as they put her in the Twitter banner. But in terms like the team as a whole, or let's be honest, the executives, I don't think they even like Vanny. I don't think they like her as a character, and because they don't like her, they're going to do the absolute bare minimum for her, because that's what Steelwool has done since day one, is the bare minimum for Vanny. Now, all that stuff with Help Wanted and, you know, the AR emails, that, you know, building her up, you know, those, I'll admit, like, okay, like, it was pretty clear that they were building her up, and, like, it seemed like they cared. But, like, once came Security Breach, I question whether Steelwool likes Vanny. And because here's the thing, if you don't like a character, as someone who is an author and who does create characters, if you don't like your character, you're not going to give them attention. You're not going to give them your 100% because you don't like them. You don't like them, so you're not going to give them the respect that they deserve, honestly, you know. And I'm guilty of this. You know, I have my own characters who, you know, I sideline and who I don't explore because I don't particularly like them. You know, I made them, and then I'm like, now that I look back on it, I don't like these guys. But yeah, you know, so I'm guilty of that. But I can kind of recognize when that happens in media, and I'm just gonna say it. Steelwool does not like Vanny, you know. Now, of course, there's the debate of, you know, I think that it's the executives at Steelwool who don't like her, because, you know, again, you know, there are probably people within the Steelwool team who do like Vanny, you know, but because they have to listen to the executives, they have to listen to the managers, you know. I highly doubt Steelwool runs like Valve, you know. I doubt that they're managerless. I doubt that you can just work on whatever you want. You know, there are team managers, and the team managers get to decide, you know, everything that happens, you know, what gets the most attention, you know, what's the most important, and they decide, you know, which characters get shafted, you know, which characters get the least amount of attention. And it's becoming more and more evident, you know, as time goes on, that Vanny is that character that got shafted by the dev team, you know. She clearly has the least amount of work. And when I said earlier that she has the bare minimum in Security Breach, I mean that. Like, let's really stop and think about Vanny's presence in Security Breach. It is the bare minimum. She appears once, you know, and, you know, sort of skipping in front of the fountain to show, oh, this character exists. She, you know, appears in the Lost and Found next to establish, oh, you know, she's an actual threat. She appears once, you know, in, you know, roaming, because, you know, we gotta reach that quota. You know, we can't just be scripted events. You know, we have to actually have some random events. And then she appears in the endings. All the endings, we really don't see much of her. You know, yes, we see her a little bit in 3D for the Disassemble Freddy ending. But she doesn't speak in any of the endings, with the exception of Disassemble Freddy. She doesn't speak in any of the endings. You know, she barely, you know, she doesn't speak in any of the endings. And the quote-unquote, you know, best ending, the best ending for her, you know, the 3-star ending where we save the ending where the whole point is we save Vanny, she barely appears in that. Like, let's stop and actually look at the save Vanny ending. We see her mask. We see Vanny or Vanessa, you know, out of her costume, you know, in her like purple plaid coat or whatever. But she is in the distance. You know, we can't make out any detail of her face. And then she appears again with her back towards the camera, and that's it. Like, I think the only ending that we like properly see Vanny's face, or Vanessa's face, because again, you know, 2 characters, whatever, is at the end of the fire escape ending, where, you know, we see Vanny dead on the floor and Vanessa, you know, up on top of the roof. That's it. Those are the only times that we get like clear, you know, in detail look at her face. And, you know, look, you know, I'll admit it, I'm not a character designer. I don't know about like character theory or any of that. But the face is pretty important. Like, the face is probably the most important part of a character, especially when it comes to like narratives and stories where you want a lot of character. The face is the most important. So the fact that we barely see her face in the ending that is supposed to be like the Vanny ending, like her ending, should go to show you just how little Steel cares about Vanny. You know, they either don't care about her at all, or they actively dislike her. And I don't think there's any better piece of evidence to point towards that than the cut content. Especially the Heather Masters voice lines for, you know, Vanny and Vanessa. You know, if you listen to some of the voice lines, Heather Masters does a phenomenal job. Let me just say that the voice actors in FNaF, like, even, I hate Security Breach with a burning passion. I hate pretty much everything, but I gotta admit the voice actors are always fantastic. Hold on, I need some water. Yeah, the voice actors have always been, you know, the best part of this FNaF franchise. You know, even in its lowest of lows, the voice acting and voice actors have always been top tier, and Security Breach is no different. But if you look at the cut content for Vanny and Vanessa, you see that it adds a lot of personality to her. Like, you see, like, Heather Masters give her this voice of a woman who's, like, in fear of something. Like, she's afraid of messing up. And she's just so terrified of, you know, this thing that we don't know. And, it's just, it baffles me how much, like, emotion and character you can get from just a few voice lines, a few short voice lines, and it is so good. And it is just a taste. It is a taste of what Vanny could have been, and they cut it. They cut that out. You know, they cut out the Vanny meter. You know, they cut out so much. They cut out her knife. They cut so much from Vanny, and the only conclusion I can come to is that they actively dislike her, that they actively hate Vanny as a character. Why, I don't know, but what other conclusion can I come to? Like, they were handed, again, you know, the different paths that Vanny could have gone down were all interesting. They were handed this character on a silver platter, and they chose the only options that ruined her. Like, just as a concept, like, they picked the option that made her well, first off, Security Breach, they picked the option that made her, like, the worst. Like, they just sidelined her to irrelevancy. Like, it was Snoke in Last Jedi. Like, actually, there's a Security Breach is basically the Last Jedi, in my opinion, of the FNaF franchise, in more ways than one, and, like, more meta sense than you think with how divisive it is. But Security Breach, you know, it sidelined Vanny to irrelevancy with how it treated her, and ruined, it just made her, what little was salvageable, unsalvageable. You know, what character she had, made it that there was just no going back, there was no fixing her character, and that, you know, that interesting, you know, those interesting ideas that what Vanny could have been is just gone now. And, you know, I haven't really said this anything, but waste potential is what I hate more. Like, if there's one thing I hate more than a bad story, it's a bad story that has every right to be good. And this isn't the first time I'm experiencing this, my first video was on, the SCP Wiki. I didn't mention this, but the reason why I started writing for the Wiki is because I used to be into the YouTube channel of Tales from the Foundation, SCP Animated. They had a lot of good stuff going on. Hello, Mr. Thunder. Anyway, Tales from the Foundation had a lot of good stuff going for it with its characters. I loved the characters in the in the sort of golden era of Tales from the Foundation. And then they just butchered them, they just ruined those characters, to get, to play the algorithm, which, I hate. So, yeah, and that hatred for what Tales from the Foundation did pushed me to start writing for the Wiki, because they made me say, oh, look at these characters that they butchered. I'm going to make my own characters. And spoiler alert, there are some characters in, my SCP Tales that are inspired by characters from Tales from the Foundation. And, the driving force for me writing, at least at the beginning, was doing these characters good. Like, doing these characters right. Because I was so infuriated with Tales from the Foundation that... God, Tales from the Foundation, Tales from the Pizzaplex. Like, Jesus Christ. Oh, why are the things named similar? But I was so infuriated with Tales from the Foundation that it drove me to start writing. Now, granted, I'm not going to act like my writing is superb. It's not even good. My writing is trash. But, I think that I at least try to do my characters justice. And now I'm feeling that same, enragement with Security Breach and Ruin. Because they had this. They had every right to make Vanny this great character. They had every right to make Security Breach this emotionally driven, story-based narrative, with deep characters and shit. And they just didn't. They just chose not to. And whether it was because, they wanted more mystery or some other bullshit reason, it was because they didn't like Vanny for whatever reason, it doesn't change the fact that they ruined it. They fumbled it, and they didn't just fumble it, they obliterated it. They ruined any chance of having that good story with Vanny, and even if they explore her character later, it will not, and never will be, as interesting or as in-depth or as engaging as those other options would have been when Help Wanted came out and, what AR was teasing. Now, there is one thing that I want to address before I end, and that is Scott's role in all this. Because something that I'm sure people have been, screaming at the screen for me to address is Scott's role, that Steelwool is innocent in this, and that this was all Scott's fault. Scott is the one who ruined Vanny. Oh, sorry. Scott is the one who ruined Vanny. It's his fault. You should be blaming Scott, not Steelwool. Let me start by saying that, number one, I don't think it is Scott, or I'm sure Scott definitely has a hand in this, and Scott is not innocent. Everything I've said about my disappointment and stuff, that applies to Scott too, but I think Steele is more at fault than Scott. But number one, if there is conclusive evidence, undeniable evidence that Vanny was all Scott's fault, and that Steele truly had no say in Vanny's character, and that Steele actually loves Vanny, but, Scott decided to pull her out for whatever reason, and, it's not Steele's fault, I will happily, aim my my enragement at Scott. Everything I've said so far about, Steele not caring about Vanny and all that, just apply that to Scott if there is definitive evidence. However, I don't think Scott is responsible, at least not as much as Steele is. I know that Scott is sort of the head of the story, but there is some stuff that make me question that. Mainly the fact that Scott didn't know how big Security Breach was until he went to Steelwool, said, okay guys, it's almost game day, but we're going to release Security Breach soon. Hey, so how's it going? You guys ready? And Steele was like, oh yeah, we're actually not even close to being done. We got scope creep, and now this project is massive, and we are not even close to ready. And so, you know, that's when Scott first delayed it. But, you know, that makes me think, you know, if Scott didn't know how big Security Breach was, if he didn't know that Security Breach was going to be so big that it would need delayed, then I highly doubt that he was hands-on enough to know how Steelwool was handling Vanny. I highly doubt that. I feel like that Vanny was, you know, when it comes to how much of the lore is Scott and how much is somebody else's, I think that Scott has slowly been weaning away. At least before, you know, I think that now he's taking a more hands-on approach because of how poorly received Security Breach was. But I think that at the time, Scott was kind of weaning the story away from himself and more towards Steelwool. So Help Wanted and AR, that was sort of Scott building this foundation for like, okay, here are the characters, you know, here's the general direction. Take it away, Steelwool. Let's see what you've got. Let's see what you're made of. And then Steelwool, and then Security Breach was Steelwool's thing. That was their responsibility to make a story with it. And we all know they didn't. We all know that they fumbled it, that they said, oh, you know, forget Vanny, you know, we're not going to focus on her. Instead, we're going to focus on super convoluted lore stuff, you know, because MatPat, you know, made a theory and he was right about it. So we got to change the story now because, you know, he guessed it and we want mystery because mystery and confusion means that people will talk about it, and people talking about it means that FNaF will be, and our project will be trendy for a long time. Yeah. Remember that? Remember that Steel... Don't forget, it was Steelwool who contacted MatPat about, oh, you know, you got that right. You know, do you have someone on the inside? Because, like, you guessed this dead on. It was Steelwool who contacted MatPat, not Scott. So that leads me to believe, along with some other evidence I'm not going to get into, some other stuff, some other minor stuff, that leads me to believe that the story of Security Breach and the story of, like, Vanny and Vanessa was on Steelwool. That was Steelwool's job to tell that story. And Steelwool said no, basically. They said that we want to tell our own thing with, you know, Greg Bot and, you know, Patient 47 or 42 or 46 or whatever the hell the number is, with Burn Trap and all and the Blob and all that. We're going to sideline Vanny because, again, it goes back to what I said earlier, that Steelwool doesn't like Vanny. They hate Vanny's character for whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe Vanny ate one of the devs' grandma or some shit. I don't know. But for whatever reason, Steelwool doesn't like Vanny. They don't like Vanny. So when Scott said, hey, you know, make this story about Vanny, they did the bare minimum for her and instead focused most of Security Breach's story on this other stuff that they wanted to tell. At which point, Scott saw that and was like, oh, what the fuck have you guys done? Like, this isn't what I wanted to tell. Okay, now I'm going to take a more hands-on approach, you know, with Ruin, which those are rumors. I'll admit it, those are rumors that Scott's taking a more direct hands-on approach. Those are just rumors, so don't quote me that that's absolutely what happened. So yeah, and that's my speculation, my conspiracy theory as to what happened, that Steelwool didn't like Vanny for whatever reason, so they didn't tell her story and focused on their own stuff. And which is exactly why, as of right now, and until Vanny gets the attention she deserves from Steelwool, until her arc is told, until Steelwool and Scott are able to do Vanny justice and are able to give her a compelling story, which, again, at this point is basically impossible, like, because they butchered her character and they made her unsalvageable, until she gets a proper story and proper attention, I will be adamantly against Steelwool being the devs for FNaF in this post-Scott era. I do not think Steelwool is a good development team for FNaF after Scott, not because they can't make good games, not because that they don't have some story idea that I don't like, but because they are so insistent on sidelining and ignoring this one character who I was looking forward to seeing for almost 2 years. And because of that, yeah, I do kind of hate Steelwool, because, again, this character who had a lot of hype and who I was super excited to see is just being sidelined and ignored over and over and over and over and over again. Like, come on, guys. Like, come on. And until something changes, I will hold the opinion that Steelwool are not good devs for FNaF in this post-Scott era. And honestly, like, as far as I'm aware, FNaF ended with 6. I know that there are people who hate hearing that, but I'm gonna say it. Modern FNaF is not canon to me. It's fan fiction from. It's just high budget fan fiction. You know, it's not canon. You know, the true FNaF ended at 6. Again, but I want to make this clear. Not because I don't like the ideas introduced in Help Wanted, you know, in that post FNaF 6 era, but because because I loved the ideas brought in Help Wanted. I loved the foundations made by Help Wanted and AR, because I loved those and I was so ready. And then Security Breach came and did nothing with them, and decided to tell a completely different story, you know, with, I guess, AI and mimics and stuff, which, fair, like, I'd probably would enjoy it on its own right, but the fact that this other story was killed in order to tell that, this character was just abandoned to irrelevancy in order to tell that story, I just can't be happy with that. And I cannot, and I said at the beginning of this little rant that I have not bought Security Breach. I have not bought or read any of the books because I can't enjoy them. I can't enjoy these stories because this other story that I wanted told, that I wanted to hear, was just abandoned. And it had nothing. You know what I'm saying. So, yeah. Okay, so I guess that'll wrap things up for now. I just wanted to, Jesus, it's nearly an hour of talking. I'll probably go and cut some of this, you know, to make it more bearable, but that's my little rant video. Well, anyway, thank you guys for listening to me vent and rant for a bit. Like I said, I don't plan to do videos like this very often, depending on if Steelwool pisses me off more, or if some other company pisses me off more. I might do another video like this. I'll say this, expect a, like, full Ruin review, in the coming weeks and days, and maybe months. That's something I would like to do, you know, not these rant videos. But thank you guys for watching, or listening anyways. I hope you enjoyed, or I guess it doesn't really matter if you enjoyed or not, because this was a rant video. This is more for venting than anything else. But if you're interested in any future videos, be sure to subscribe. If you want a taste of what a normal video would be like, check out my first video on the channel. I'll leave it on the end card. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. See ya.